I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. What I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. Hey, what's up, world? Welcome to another edition of I Mix What I Like live right here in Black Power Media. Again, I'm Jared Ball. Happy to be your host. Have a lot to get to this morning, and I'm very excited to do so. Please, of course, if you're here live, welcome. Invite others to jump on in with you. Of course, like, share, subscribe, click the join button, all of those good things so you never miss updates. Get the bell clicked, all of those good things. And welcome. Saludos, Deborah. Right on. Welcome. Yes, continue to support Data and Wakuri, of course, no doubt, and we'll continue to support that effort as well. Yeah. Yeah, right on. Send us a couple of ducats. Of course, make sure you're signed up at blackpowermedia.org, and of course, where you can also find the Patreon and all the other good things as well. Good morning to you, James, as well. Yeah, George Carlin, no doubt. Big shout out to him. And Grandfather Silberg, right on. Howard Zinn. Havlicek, okay, all right. Peace, Anthony Balagoon. Yes, sir. Hope everybody caught the Warrior class. I actually did not this weekend. That's my bad. I need to get caught up. But anyway, but if you're like me and missed it, you have a chance to go back and catch it. So please do that. All right. What I want to do today first is to start where just come back and start where we often want to before we get into the specifics of today. So yesterday I actually I've already put in the show notes. Hold on a second here. No. This is what we want here. In the show notes, I already put the links to this and to a petition in support of Mutulu Shakur. Want to continue to try to support the efforts to make a push to get Sundiata, Akoli, and Mutulu and other political prisoners freed and home, so they can at least enjoy a little bit of the remaining time they have left free. Leonard Peltier, of course, Mumia as well. But yesterday, I just happened to catch a little bit of Katie Halper's live stream. Usually I see her with Matt Taibbi, and I will later today on the show. They do Wrapping Up the News, but yesterday they had a live stream with Randy Credico and Roger Waters, famously co-founder of Pink Floyd, a band I actually love and have seen live. And that was a whole experience. Should probably talk about it at some point, but But they were talking about, of course, Julian Assange. So I couldn't help it. I dropped $5 on the super chat and asked that they do a similar live stream for other more longer held political prisoners. And those, I might add, who precede not only the incarceration, but the work that Assange is being really persecuted for, which is, of course, his exposure of U.S. And other elite machinations in the world, and the negative impact and the threat to democracy, et cetera, that this country often represents. But of course, Sundiata, Acoli, Sundiata Acoli, and let me pull that back up real quick. Sundiata Acoli and Mutulu Shakur had already been doing that. Now, admittedly, with different technology, different organization, different politics, but similar kind of work. Whether you want to call it journalism or publishing or encouraging critical assessment of the state and organizing to that effect. In fact, Mutulu and Sundiata took it to another level in their work. They weren't just exposing what the U.S. was doing. They were organizing and aggressively attempting to struggle against it in ways that even Assange hadn't risen to, for all the good that we could argue, and I would argue he's done, that is Assange. So it isn't that I'm saying don't support Assange. We should. Assange should be free. But the singular emphasis on him among segments of the society that might be expected and could be of great help in getting them out. Just wanted to, so it was interesting that, she showed the comment, and then I think she did. I looked away, but all of a sudden they must have, because the conversation, all of a sudden they started responding to Leonard Peltier, who I had mentioned in the comment, and Mumia. They didn't mention Mutulu though. I didn't know. But their argument was, of course, they almost took the position that we have already done that. And they made reference to 30-year-old struggles for Leonard and Mumia. And then suggested that if we wanted people like that free, we have to free Assange. And sort of, presupposed or argued that there was this almost as a presupposition that we have to get Assange out, because what his work allows for is the reporting. In other words, they were saying, if we don't have Assange and the freedom to report and practice unsanctioned journalism, people like Mutulu and Sundiata wouldn't be known of and wouldn't get free. Okay, that's fine. I get it. It was the context of that event. But anyway, I just, but I do want to continue to encourage others to help them as much as possible. So, as I passed through and saw that, I figured, why not? And, but anyway, the links I put in the show notes here. So even if you're checking this out later on Spotify or wherever else, iTunes, the links are there as well. So please sign the petition, make the phone calls, emails, etc., and let's support a renewed push to get these folks out. All right. So what I want to try to do today, so there's a couple stories I want to get to before the sort of deeper dive into the crypto piece. But I think they're actually all connected, and I want to try to present them this morning in a way as I try to hold it down again for the Remix Morning Show and Boom Bap, give you your Boom Bap breakfast. I would like to try to present all of these in sort of a continuous serial fashion. And oddly, I would even want to start with the commercial media product Succession. The series just ended last night. I don't know if any of you watch it. I think it's phenomenal. And I love these kinds of dramatic looks into what I suspect is wildly accurate behavior of the white elite. And in a show that's supposed to be, I've seen and read once or twice, is supposed to be more or less based on the Murdoch family. But involving a billionaire media mogul and what that means for him and his family politically. And as the title of the show suggests, there is the point is the succession plan for this aging patriarch and what it means for his children. And I'm not going to spoil anything, but that question of succession took I didn't see what happened at the end of this season happening. I didn't see it coming playing quite out this way. And I thought how they did it was brilliant and just seeming wildly accurate to the kinds of shady business and family dealings, and the recognition in particular. The point I'm really getting at is that media are not here for entertainment, for news, for anything other than psychologically situating people for the extraction and the exploitation they will have to suffer. Everything is power, as is the creation of wealth, which is something we'll come back to as well. That whether it's fiat or crypto, the purpose of wealth is not the accumulation of some collection or pile of money. It is for the purpose of manipulating others, hoarding or wielding power over others. So Succession, the show, makes that perfectly clear. And I love when they show this in these kinds of series. The wealthy, it isn't about money in the sense that we are often encouraged to think of it as. It is about dominance, imperial conquest and dominance. So when Fanon said colonialism is the total conquering of land and labor, that is all, period. I mean, there's a reason why he was trying to be that succinct, that direct. Anyway. But a story that we didn't get to, or that I didn't get to on the remix last week, that I wanted to start off with today. So, again, to sort of situate how I would like to try to lay out this discussion this morning of crypto's rebranding of capitalism and Black capitalism. And try to draw these parallels between media, wealth, and power. And to Fanon's point, there is this story that the folks at the Gray Zone covered the other day, or a couple weeks ago, actually. Let me turn this on. And you know what? Shout out to Franny French, who put me on to another browser editing, whatchamacallit here, that apparently I didn't use properly on this one. How did that not? There's no, anyway, whoops. Backed by AFRICOM, corporations plunder the Democratic Republic of the Congo for climate-friendly materials and blame China. Uh, again, this is all the, I think I got all the stories already linked in the show notes, and I encourage people to go into their own deeper look into this. But in terms of how China is being situated and blamed for what the West is ultimately themselves trying to do, is sort of that same thing of, like when this whole claim of Russia propagandizing through Facebook, it's them saying again, don't do what we do. You're not allowed to do what we do. Anyway, so just here it says, more recently, U.S. President Biden's International Trade Administration declared, quote, with total mineral wealth estimated in the tens of trillions of dollars, what is now called the Democratic Republic of Congo offers opportunities for American firms with a high tolerance for risk. The role of the Africa Command is to reduce that risk. The U.S. Department of Defense says that Africa has a plethora of strategic materials such as cobalt, chromium, tantalum, and more. African resources are critical to 21st century progress, end quote. So again, to Fanon's point, what is colonialism here to do? It is to extract, it is the control of land and labor. DRC has an estimated population of 93 million people. The country's entire gross domestic product is around $50 billion, making it one of the poorest countries in the world. As trillion-dollar companies like Apple, Microsoft, and Tesla rely on DRC's materials, 7 in 10 Congolese survive on less than $1.90 a day. Life expectancy is 60 years compared to 78 in the US, and infant mortality is 66 deaths per 1,000 live births compared to 5.6 in the US. So, again, just to sort of remind and resituate the context for even this discussion today of primarily on cryptocurrency, and what I'm arguing is a rebranding of capitalism and imperial aggression, etc., into something that is something else. And that ultimately this is what the goal is: conquering land, conquering labor, conquering resources, and then affixing a media apparatus meant to maintain and justify and explain that arrangement. So anyway, I just wanted to start there, as you know. Anyway, just wanted to start there. Africa Command, etc., etc. So with that sort of, again, sort of established at its base, there was this other story that came out the other day that again relates to this point. In Covert Action magazine, Edward Bernays, Propaganda and the U.S.-backed 1954 Guatemalan coup. So, like a lot of people who bring him up, I often talk about Edward Bernays in the context of helping rebrand propaganda as public relations, or rebrand psychological warfare as public relations and mass communication, and developing propaganda here in the United States. But it's important to be reminded, as I think this piece does well to do, that there, again, is a very colonial basis for all of this. There is this need to conquer land and territory, to manage the colonies, so to speak, and in this sense play a role in the Guatemalan coup. That again, it's not just about entertainment, it's not just about selling products, it's about again, selling selling conquest, selling white dominance, European aggression, imperialism, etc. So as he says here, you're not really lying. You're not really lying if the lies you tell are to counter other lies. That's interesting. That's just an interesting redefinition. All right. Edward Bernays may be known as the father of public relations, but you would not be mistaken if you thought of him as the father of lies. He was a bullshit artist par excellence who pioneered countless methods of deceiving the public. From advertising cigarettes to overthrowing governments, anything was possible. As he said, the cure for propaganda is more propaganda. So whether it was big tobacco, Bernays understood the truth is malleable based on an individual's needs. People are not purely rational actors. They make choices contrary to their self-interest, ignore facts they find inconvenient, and avoid information that may damage their ego. The nephew of famed psychoanalyst Sigmund Freud drew on Freud's work into the unconscious mind to construct elaborate public relations campaigns that preyed on these tendencies. His preferred tactic, the AstroTurf campaign, which gave the illusion of having grassroots support. There is no moment in history greater than this one for that concern to be real. So again, this article is linked in the show notes. I encourage people to read it in its entirety to get to some of the details about his cigarette campaigns. I'm scrolling over here, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm primarily for today want to get to his relationship with the United Fruit Company, or the relationship to the United Fruit Company, which, as the article says here, by 1950 had a problem. That is, Guatemala, the source of its largest cash crop, was in the midst of a protracted revolution. What is to be done? And you can see some of the pictures of not only people working, but the branding and propaganda around it in the article. And that problem specifically involved, in October 1944, overthrow of the Ubico government, and what became known for the Guatemalan people, the October Revolution, and led to the election of the, quote, spiritual socialist Juan Jose Arevalo as its new leader. In part, his response, or his involvement, that is, Edward Bernays' involvement, was to bring in the Middle American Information Bureau, which was established in 1943, and had an estimate of 25,000 Americans working in the media. The organization spun events in Central America through the filter of United Fruit's economic and political goals, providing American journalists and opinion leaders with United Fruit-approved context. And then Middle America, of course, became, not as it's, I think, often associated with here, the middle of this country, so to speak, but the middle of the continent, meaning the southern or central region of the Americas, which, of course, the United States considers to this day its backyard. The phrase Middle America, an attempt by the two at rebranding Central America, came from the Middle American Research Institute, a Zemurray-funded research group at Tulane University. This is Zemurray, who is talked about in much greater detail here in terms of working with Bernays. Ultimately, to get rid of Arevalo's successor, Jacobo Arbenz, who was promoting, as it says here, promising agrarian reforms that return land from American businesses to the Guatemalan people. Yeah, this article is actually fascinating and deserves much more attention. But anyway, Bernays knew that for a coup to take place, he would have to appeal not only to United Fruit, but also its well-intentioned liberal critics. And this is a part I thought was very interesting. That is, to help overthrow, or to create a coup that would overthrow the democratically elected socialist leadership. Bernays not only would have to appeal to the Dulles brothers run United Fruit Company, the Dulles of CIA and Warren Commission fame, and United Fruit fame, but that he would have to win over the well-intentioned, as he says here, liberal critics. So there was a back and forth in The Nation magazine, where Bernays, as this article suggests, likely using someone else or a pen name, or having someone write under a pen name, Ellis Ogle, began to push for getting liberals won over to, as he says here, playing a decisive role in invading or overthrowing overthrowing Arbenz. To drum up support, it was needed to create messaging that liberal press and the liberal members of society would start to promote, as we see happening here all the time. That to one of the there is, and again, similar to where I'm going later, is that there has to be a winning over popularly of liberals, not just, so it's not just seen as some conservative, hawkish effort. Yeah, so this part that I've highlighted here is talking about how William Godet, who was working for the CIA, was likely writing under the pen name and used by the intelligence agencies to to do freelance writing under a pen name, as it says here, to help promote an overthrow. Bernays, having removed his final obstacle to a coup, began organizing trips to Guatemala for reporters, beginning with the New York Times writers William Lisner and Creed Calhoun. Bernays instigated a press panic with carefully curated tours highlighting the dangers of the Arbenz government. Codenamed Operation PB Success, the CIA operation lasted almost a year and consisted of psychological warfare designed to break the will of the Guatemalan people. Although Bernays was not directly involved, the CIA took a cue from the PR guru and flooded Guatemalans with propaganda to counter the Arbenz government's own messages, the most notorious example being a fake radio station named Voice of Liberation. So again, for me, the point is always that that for those in power, advertising, marketing, branding, propaganda, psychological warfare, mass communication, strategic communication are all synonyms. Branding, all of these are synonyms. They function in the same way, with the same purpose, with the ultimately with the same goal. So whether he was just laying down the blueprint or actively participating is not really relevant, because Bernays's approach was seen, or is seen, has been used, is seen as part of a viable, and I'm going to come back to this specifically referencing, talking about the CIA and crypto and blockchain, that they see these avenues as part of what would be considered for them best practices or best use of the ideas, the technology, the messaging processes. I mean, this article really is fascinating. I mean, there's just so much into it, and I'm really only using it for very limited purposes, admittedly. Again, why I've linked it, I hope folks will take it upon themselves to check into this. Bernays, for his part, was ambivalent about his involvement in the coup. In his war on the truth, he had somehow lost sight of his role in fomenting unrest and convincing himself that He was the real victim. I too, he says, quote, became a casualty of this revolution, he wrote, reflecting on his time lobbying against Guatemala. United Fruit's public relations director sent me a note telling me I was so well off economically that I didn't need the United Fruit company as a client. So in other words, they did so well, used his tactics so well, made so much money that they no longer needed him, having already taken up, made use of his work. That is Bernays, or as the article says here, the father of lies. In this sense, Bernays is responsible for our current information crisis. His public relations campaigns formed the foundation of modern disinformation and influence operations. You are not really lying if the lies you tell are to counter other lies. The cure for propaganda is more propaganda. We can see the influence of Bernays today all around us in politics and beyond. Dark money networks birthing artificial advocacy organizations, shadowy donors funding fake pressure groups. Bernays' specter illuminates the television where think tanks assemble pundits on the factory line. But most of all, we see him on social media platforms, spaces reliant on a kind of emotional manipulation Bernays perfected a century before Facebook and Cambridge Analytica existed. Astroturfing is now the primary tool of political deception online. Militaries and police departments operate under fake identities, politicians maintain burner accounts, and government agencies direct troll armies. End quote. So, again, for my limited purposes this morning, that speaks largely to where I'm heading. We have, and it even speaks to the respectful disagreement I have with Brother Daruba on this issue. We cannot condemn entire generations. We cannot blame entirely groups of people for not being where we want them to be politically. To a certain extent, we have to recognize the struggle we even have in organizing ourselves and our work, given all that we are up against. It is easy to produce, popularize, distribute that which presents itself as progressive, radical, the only option, the only solution, when in reality there is so much more to engage. But there is at no point in world history has it been easier to falsely discuss, present, challenge what are the problems of the world. And that underneath it is the need for those in power to justify or hide or explain or obfuscate the wild and increasing extraction and inequality that is happening in this country and around the world. So what Bernays, what the CIA, the FBI are described as doing in that one article about really just one takeover in one country is happening writ large, as the article is concluding there, all over the place, and at hyper speed, making it more and more difficult to, I think, properly assess the situation and then to organize that situation out of existence. So I don't, so I think it may be frustrating, and I understand the frustration, but I think we need to be mindful of that as we try to figure this out and how to respond to it. And to that point, just a bit of breaking news that I'm sure is to some going to be shocking. It was reported the other day that Amazon ads deceive customers. In In a wild revelation, a coalition of unions accuses Amazon of violating laws prohibiting unfair and deceptive practices. Amazon.com Inc. Incorporated is deceiving consumers by failing to clearly delineate between paid advertisement and organic search results on its online marketplace, according to a coalition of unions, the latest barb in long-running feud between the world's biggest online retailer and organized labor. Amazon's search platform itself may be deceptive as a whole. The Strategic Organizing Center, whose members include the International Brotherhood of Teamsters and the Service Employees International Union, last month lodged a complaint with the Department of Labor alleging Amazon provided, quote, misleading or grossly incomplete data about the number of COVID-19 infections potentially spread in its U.S. facilities. The company disputed the allegation. In April, Amazon employees in Alabama voted against being represented by the Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union. A federal labor official last month ordered a new election, saying Amazon interfered in the election process by encouraging workers to cast ballots via a mailbox that was within view of parking lot security cameras. A separate group is trying to organize Amazon warehouse workers on New York's Staten Island, while the Teamsters are seeking to unionize company facilities in Canada. So admittedly, not a huge part of the theme I'm developing this morning necessarily, but again, Amazon, among the more dominant, not only, well, companies, not only obviously, but digital media companies, with its all-powerful web services platform, is engaging in the same kind of anti-labor, anti-worker, anti-black, anti-poor, anti-progressive, anti-human propaganda and messaging that can continue to confuse the situation and make it harder for people not organized, not consciously struggling, not politically educated in certain ways to see. And reminds me of, so it makes me think of a kind of another deep dive I kind of went into this weekend around psychics and atheism and magic. And I say all that to say that for some of us of a certain age, we would remember the amazing Randy, who was a magician, who grew to a certain level of prominence primarily in the 70s, but had a long career before that as an escape artist, a magician. He had become like the generation before my, Harry Houdini. He had, done all those kinds of tricks, but then he had a new sort of second career in exposing psychics as performing magic tricks that they were passing off as paranormal. And I say all that to say that one of the more famous things he did, because he was somewhat controversial in the sense that he would create hoaxes to make the point, because his argument in part was, when you're dealing with people who need to believe or want to believe or who are encouraged to believe in the paranormal, and encouraged to the point where today we're talking about a $2 billion business, there's big money in convincing people that you have psychic paranormal abilities. But if you, when his point was, when you're dealing with people who have been encouraged under that level of propaganda, as I would put it, to believe or need to believe, then you would have to go to sort of extraordinary lengths to show that what they were doing was suffering a con. So one of the things he did was he created what was called the Carlos hoax, where a younger Latino artist connects with Randy, starts working with Randy, having a relationship with Randy, and they conceive of a plan to trick people, to show them how easy it is to create a cult, to create a cult figure who can pretend to offer the paranormal psychic possibilities and then use, cold and hot read techniques to make it seem like, they're reading people's minds and doing all this kind of stuff. And it worked. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because in their explanation of how it worked, they planted, the press obviously was different at the time in terms of the technology, but they planted false background stories about Carlos. They created this whole, but said that if they had just done a little bit of research, it would have been easily exposed as a fraud. But it took on a whole life of its own. And his point was the journalist community did not check, largely because they wanted to promote the belief and they wanted to ride the wave of the money being made off of the belief. So I'm sort of making the same argument about today, that we are encouraged to believe in capitalism, in Black capitalism, in non-political solutions to political problems. We almost have a need at this point to believe that we can free ourselves by engaging the economy more responsibly and with a greater level of literacy and maturity. And I feel in many ways, in my own private, personal, very small, microcosmic, certainly not at the level of many others, or certainly at the level of Randy, who had become this big star. I feel what he was struggling with in terms of, even when you show people the trick, the belief or the need to believe takes over. And in some situations, he became seen as the enemy of the very people he was trying to help, who he was trying to work with, that he saw as his own, that he was trying to expose tricks and lies to. And exposing the tricks and the lies, he became the target of in some cases, of the animosity of his own audiences. Similar in some of the atheism deep dives that I was looking at as well, that is somewhat associated with this, but we'll come back to that another time, perhaps. But my point is, it's the same propagandized, encouraged messaging is happening today with capitalism, business, Black capitalism, entrepreneurialism, and cryptocurrency, as was happening at that time and is happening today with people having a need to believe in the psychic capabilities of others and so on and so forth, because it does provide for some an important healing, emotional relief of sorts. So, yeah, I think I can, I'll come back to those. Come back to those if we have time. I don't think I need to. Again, okay, so still sort of on my way. There is another story that came out the other day that in its own way speaks to this issue in the problems that I think we're confronting. I know a lot has been said. We've covered it already on the remix and elsewhere, that the whole Astro World tragedy involving Travis Scott. But I only want to pick it up here because of this story, an ad age from the other day that says Anheuser-Busch discontinues Travis Scott's CACTI hard seltzer. The move comes in the wake of November's Astro World tragedy. And my point in this is really only to highlight the role and remind of the role played, now this is saying I'm not logged into my account, the role played in our media environment by these, by advertisers. as I've talked about many times, the annual expenditure at this point is fast approaching $600 billion a year spent annually on ad revenue. Hey, this is not working right. It's not letting me back in all of a sudden. Anyway, but yeah, getting somewhere approaching hold on one second here. Let me try to fix this real quick. 500 to 600 billion a year in media and marketing services spending total. So that's a lot of ad revenue being spent. And what it does is, anyway, it's not letting me back in, but I don't know, that's weird. But it's they, more than the owners of particular media outlets. It is advertisers who determine content and popularity. So if you don't get the ad revenue, if you don't get the funding, you could be the most diverse, radical owner, but your media outlet will fall. And similarly, if you don't have venue and media, a music company, and the investment in ad revenue around all of that to push you as an artist, you can be easily deplatformed or have it find it harder to find venues and outlets to share your work and perform. And again, I'm wanting to maintain that sort of paralleled understanding that advertising, as I always quote from Marshall McLuhan, is a vast military operation, as he said, but it is seen, as we've already been looking at here, as part of a psychological warfare military apparatus. So even when a story like that, when I see a story like that, this is just being reminded of, if you have use, you can be deployed. So if Travis Scott has use to the advertisers in the industry, he will be deployed. And to the extent that he loses his value, he can be pulled back, shelved, disappeared, etc. Okay. All right. I want to show, as a segue to the sort of next part about this, getting closer to the specifics of crypto. I want to show this short video that was put on The Intercept, because first of all, I like the video and many of the points it makes, but I also think it speaks to, because we have to come back to it. I started to try to watch that recent reparations town hall. I feel the same way about. I feel like I'm in the same place with reparations that I am with the crypto stuff. Like it's and in this case, my response would be largely the same. So I like what this video is. Anyway, I like the video. So let me pull the video up, and let's check this piece out here. No audio. Okay, hold on. My bad. 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 Dang, I keep thinking I got it and I don't got it. So I've had to, again, I'm trying to avoid. All right, hold on a second. Okay, so I got to do it from here. Hold on a second. I got to do it from here because I got to work around now. Let's see. No, I gotta come up with that workaround because of this thing with Chrome not working with. All right, here we go. This now we should be cooking.
The American dream used to be owning your own home. Now it's being debt-free. Altogether, Americans owe a record-breaking $15 trillion and counting. Sold as a lifeline, debt is too often an anchor, dragging people down with compounding interest and fees, pulling wealth and resources from the working class to bloat Wall Street's bottom line. Every debt we hold is someone else's asset, with our monthly payments providing steady revenue streams for greedy creditors. Households with credit card debt pay around $1,155 a year in interest alone. Americans now die owing an average of $62,000, much of it credit card debt. A significant amount of the $770 billion of credit card debt sloshing around is medical bills, ambulance rides, doctor's visits, and surgeries paid for with the swipe of a little plastic card. Then there's the additional $140 billion of medical debt and collections, combined with an estimated $50 billion in back rent and $1.4 trillion in auto loans. Much of this debt didn't exist a few generations ago. Consider the $1.8 trillion in student loans this country now holds, which wasn't a problem in the 1960s when college was often free, or close to it. Ronald Reagan helped change that. He made his name by demonizing protesters on the University of Berkeley campus. In 1967, as governor of California, he pushed the university system to start charging students tuition so they would, quote, think twice about whether they wanted to pay to carry a picket sign. During his career as senator, Joe Biden advanced Reagan's project, working to expand student lending. As a senator from Delaware, the credit card industry capital, Biden was a devoted servant of the financial sector. He fought relentlessly for 2005 legislation that weakened borrower protections and made bankruptcy more difficult for regular borrowers, strengthening the hand of the student loan and credit card industries and helping cause a wave of home foreclosures. But debt is not just about money. It's about power. Debt has long been both a source of profit and a tool of social control and racial domination. The founding fathers knew this. Thomas Jefferson argued that debt should be canceled after natural limits, which he took to be about a generation, but only for white men like himself. In 1803, he wrote that debt should be used as a weapon against indigenous people to steal their territory. We shall be glad to see the good and influential individuals among them run in debt, because we observe that when these debts get beyond what the individuals can pay, they become willing to lop them off by a cession of lands. Sharecropping, redlining, predatory lending all continued this trend, deepening racial inequities. As a result of the 2008 mortgage crisis, Black and brown families lost upwards of 50% of their collective wealth. For regular debtors, even a late payment can spell disaster. A tanked credit score can make it impossible to rent an apartment or get a job. Default on your student loans? The government can seize your wages, tax refunds, and Social Security. Debtors' prisons are technically unconstitutional, but in practice, people struggling to pay medical bills or court fees can wind up in jail. But not all debtors are treated so cruelly. Rich people regularly walk away from their obligations, and companies engage in strategic defaults. The banks that crashed the economy in 2008, they got bailed out. Donald Trump, the self-professed king of debt, left a string of corporate bankruptcies in his wake. And don't forget that during the COVID pandemic, the federal government spent hundreds of billions of dollars buying up bad corporate debt belonging to entities including Exxon and Walmart, and offering companies, including payday lenders, forgivable loans. It's time regular debtors got a break, too. It's time for a jubilee, the erasure of debts, and a rebalancing of power between regular people and elites. It's not a new idea. Jubilee was described in the Bible, and many ancient civilizations had periodic jubilees to avert social and economic collapse. Our earliest recorded histories are stone tablets inscribed with credit ledgers. Nearly as long as debt has existed, debt cancellation has existed too. Throughout history, debtors have risen up to demand relief. In the early 6th century BCE, a debtors' riot helped nudge ancient Athens towards democracy. The reforms, known as the shaking off of burdens, included debt absolution and an end to debt bondage. Something similar happened in ancient Rome after debtors mounted the world's first general strike. In the United States, indebted workers and farmers revolted in the colonial era, and then again during the Great Depression. Later, the call for debt cancellation rang out at Occupy Wall Street. In recent years, striking debtors helped force the government to cancel billions of dollars in student loans. Abolishing medical debt, back rent, and student loans would free up money now spent on debt servicing for other things. People could buy homes and start families in the racial wealth gap era. Research estimates that canceling student debt alone would boost the economy by up to $108 billion a year and create 1 million jobs. Under pressure from activists, President Biden campaigned on a promise to cancel an immediate minimum of $10,000 of student debt per borrower. Thanks to the Higher Education Act of 1965, he has the power to cancel all federal student loans. With a single signature on an executive order, President Biden can free people from student debt, giving tens of millions of people their lives and futures back. Now, we need to make him do it, and much more. We deserve nothing less than a jubilee.
I mean, I am definitely down with that. And that is, anyway, there were many good points made there that I think work for certainly work for what I'm trying to argue here, and even to the point I made already about reparations as well. And I didn't hear that mentioned to the extent I watched that town hall. I'll have to come back and watch much more of it, but that has to be part of the any reparations move, or just any movement period. And that's sort of against getting to where I'm going now, has to be part of how I think we understand and engage this discussion of cryptocurrency, which continues to be. So there's two things happening in terms of media that are conflicting. On the one hand, oh, and by the way, I thought I saw somebody in. I did peek at the comments, and that if I didn't, I thought the link to that video was already in the show notes. But if not, I'll double check after and add them for sure. But it is from the Intercept website. There are two things happening in this moment in terms of crypto and its presentation. On the one hand, there is a discussion, as we're going to get to, around crypto being given a bad reputation in the broader international discussion, that it's connected to crime or something to not be trusted, etc., and that there are those who want to engage or defend cryptocurrency who are saying we need to struggle against this false narrative that's being created. On the other hand, particularly when it comes to messaging to Black and brown and so-called people of color or world majority populations, the messaging is the exact opposite. And this is something that is not discussed in some of the broader discussions I've seen and been reading around crypto more broadly speaking, who are saying the negative narrative of crypto is what proliferates and is false. When it comes, again, similar to what I have seen happening with the buying power argument when it comes to Black people and the most susceptible and in need, the messaging comes as crypto is the salvation, that it is an option, if not for the entire community to save itself, it is a positive pathway through which some of us can walk and be saved. So in those competing, those two competing media realities, there's a lot more room for confusion and loss of some points that I'm hoping today will help clarify. By the way, I did reach out to the blockchain socialist and Isaiah, is it? My bad, man. Is it Isaiah Jackson, the brother who wrote Bitcoin in Black America a couple years ago, and invited them on. We'll see if that ever, how that works. The blockchain socialist who I talked about recently responded positively. Haven't heard from Isaiah. So we'll see. We'll see. And I want him to come on because I don't agree with what he's saying, and I would like to have the discussion. So we'll see. Not just to be talking about people, because but so okay, so there's those two competing things. One thing I just want to remind everybody, we brought this up before, the late economist and sort of, I guess, the father of neoliberal economics at the Chicago School of Economics, Milton Friedman, predicted, as pro-crypto folks like to point out, I think to make my point oddly, that he predicted a digital currency that would be free of regulation, and free of government. And that's what Milton Friedman always wanted, up to a point. Of course, people like Milton Friedman, they want government to provide the broader the existence of a framework that protects them to do what they want to do. Going back to, one of my favorite books, co-authored by Laura Nader, Plunder. The rule of law is to justify and give legal cover to colonial exploitation and extraction. So they want government for that. But then that's it. They don't want to be regulated, taxed. They don't want it to be redistributed away from them. They want government to redistribute everything ever upwards to themselves. But to the so-called left or radical proponents of crypto, I think that is something to be reminded of. All right. So, okay. So a couple stories have come up that I think will help, allow us to go over some recent news and sort of make this point. One of which is this story of Craig Wright, who wins a U.S. court battle for Bitcoin fortune worth billions. And for those who are not aware, and I am only recently made aware, oh man, none of my annotations, why are they not popping up though? There they go. Okay. Oh, okay. There they go. There they go. There they go. I was about to say. And shout out again to Freddie French, because this thing is dope. I haven't fully learned its capabilities, but this little annotation joint is dope. Anyway, so I can't move this thing back over though, because hold on a second. There we go. There we go. So there's a number of fascinating things about this guy. So Craig Wright, an Australian computer scientist who claims to be the inventor of Bitcoin, has fortune worth tens of billions of dollars. And At the center of the trial were 1.1 million Bitcoins worth approximately $50 billion based on Monday's prices. These were among the first Bitcoins to be created through mining and could only be owned by a person or entity involved with the digital currency from its beginning, such as Bitcoin's creator, Satoshi Nakamoto. During the trial, both Wright and the other cryptocurrency experts testified under oath that Wright owns the Bitcoins in question, and which some have said suggests, and he claims that he is Nakamoto. The lawyers for W&K Information Defense Research, LLC, the joint venture between the two men, that is Wright and his now deceased former business partner, said they were gratified that the jury awarded the $100 million in intellectual property rights to the company, which developed software that set the groundwork for early blockchain and cryptocurrency technologies. Oh, so I guess that was it. Okay, so that was it. So my point was that this is the guy who claims to be Satoshi Nakamoto, that is apparently the holder of coins worth $50 billion. And for my purposes, or what I would hope it would be our purposes, is again another example of how the speculative investment category or space into which Black and brown people are being encouraged with greater intensity to engage as a solution is already dominated by, already controlled by, and working to the benefit of the same traditional entities or groups of people. Another piece of this that, let's see, let me pull this one up here. This is a little bit more on this guy. Another piece to this is that, let's see, pull this up here. In this piece here written in CoinDesk, why are we still debating whether Craig Wright is Satoshi? Let's see. First, the headline and much of the story are at best misleading or on purely factual grounds. That is, whether or not this guy is Satoshi and whether or not he is the owner of all this money. The ongoing civil trial between this story came out before the story I just shared that resulted in the victory for Craig Wright and the Kleiman family. So the Kleiman family got its intellectual property payment of $100 million, but it has also been ruled that Wright is the owner of the 1.1 million Bitcoin, the bigger prize, I guess. The ongoing civil trial between computer scientist Craig Wright and the estate of former collaborator David Kleiman does not actively consider the question of whether Wright is, as he has claimed for years, Satoshi. The Kleiman estate largely accepts Wright's claim as part of its standing for the lawsuit, and a verdict either way would not in and of itself amount to judgment on whether Wright is Satoshi. So is this the one? So that's the only annotation. All right. So I thought this was the one. Okay. So there was one of the reasons. So part of the speculation and the segue, I was, man, I thought that was the one that it was, is that, that in the dispute or debate as to whether Craig Wright is or is not Satoshi Nakamoto, is this question of whether he is or is not a CIA plant. So there's no evidence apparently for that, but that has been part of it. And I'm just using that as a segue to something I'm going to get to in a minute or in a couple minutes. But anyway, so that was just part of, you know, part of the mythology or the conspiracy theory. I don't know to what extent it has validity, but it is part of what I saw was being debated as to whether, in terms of this argument, whether he is or is not Satoshi. But to me, again, the only importance is the idea that Black or any other community could catch up, or encouraging even individuals as a personal solution to try to catch up into a field already awash with folks like this is again part of the mythology and the problem. And then, as I put here, why would we want a situation where we cannot, this is my point, one of my points. Why would we want a situation where we cannot even identify where wealth is concentrated or with whom it is concentrated? So part of the argument in defense of crypto is that it gives privacy and anonymity, and which I'm going to come back to. People might need to check that. But why would we want that? Why would we want a situation where a court case like this could even be happening? I don't want to live in a world where wealth that's being extracted from me and mine is disappearing, and I don't know where it's going, and I don't know who has it or how they're using it. That is, to me, what the so-called robber barons of a century ago would have, and their descendants have always wanted. If you go back, and I used to use them in my classes all the time, if you go back and look at the Jamie Johnson documentaries, The 1% and Born Rich, the main attack he gets from his classmates and his family is, you're exposing our secrets. We don't want people to know how much we have, how we got it, or what we're going to do with it. What was that? There was that film or a series that I used to clip the audio for my old radio show, where this villain is trying to teach this other villain. Or it's even like the scene in Entourage. Anybody used to watch the show Entourage, where the movie dude Ari is brought in? He's brought up to a meeting with the dude who actually owns not just the studio, but, as he says, the companies that own the studios. And he says to Ari, right now, I've made you rich enough that you could go into any store in the world and shop and buy up the store. But if you want, but he said something like, but if you stay with me, or if you want, I will get you to the level where you own the stores that people like that go to. And in this other scene, it was this, and his point was, I'm another level above, behind the curtain. And this other guy was saying, and this other thing, he was saying, the only real value of wealth, he said, is anonymity. Because when the people figure out, he said, when I travel, he said, I don't even fly first class. I don't wear fancy suits. I'm wearing $100 suit, he said, or whatever. I don't want people to know that I'm wealthier than anybody else. Because when they figure out what's going on, they're going to come looking for me. And I don't want them to know me. I don't want them to find me. Why would we want a situation where people have to debate whether or not this dude has $50 billion in cryptocurrency? Why would we want a system like that? So I'm not obviously in favor of the current economic system. I'm not in favor of banking, obviously, or unless, I mean, there's no, but but as a stage, not as a revolutionary goal, but as a stage or as a concept, even, I wouldn't want, philosophically even, I wouldn't want to get rid of what should be regulated entities that help manage and distribute and protect either individual or societal wealth, and assures its redistribution. So again, the current function of banks doesn't do that. But to say we need to get rid of banks and replace them with something that is even less regulated and even less observable, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. All right. Oh, wait, I had already opened it. Another story here related to this. Here we go. The share of global wealth held by billionaires climbs during the pandemic. So where, yeah, that's the thing. So I got to figure out how this thing works, because this is supposed to open up the notes, right? So where are they at? It says I got 5 of them on here, but where are they at? That sucks. All right, that's Franny French's fault. I'm trying to use her suggested thing here and it's not working. All right, anyway, inequality across the world has worsened during the COVID-19 pandemic, and the gap between the wealthy and the poor within countries continues to widen, according to the latest World Inequality Report. Oh man, are you really not going to show me? Why aren't they showing up though? Come on with it. That sucks. All right. But anyway, one of the reasons I wanted to bring this up is for here. See if I highlight. Oh, so now it shows up. The top 10% of the highest earners in the world now own 76% of all the wealth, while the bottom 50% owns just 2%. That translates to an average purchasing power or buying power for an individual of $4,100 for the bottom half of the world and $550,900 for the top earners. So again, I'm going to come back to the specifics of crypto, but I know this story I wanted to work in because it's talking about, again, the increased inequality and maldistribution of wealth. But as I was going to come back to, I don't, there's no response from the crypto community as to how this will be corrected. But in particular, because as we just saw, and we're going to come back to, the billionaire class, and as I'm going to get back to in just a minute, or come to in just a minute, the intelligence agency class, they're already involved. The biggest banks, they're already there. They're all already in all of this. So and as I'm going to specifically get to, they in particular benefit from and create this kind of inequality. So the idea that without some sort of political power shift and some political struggle, that those already existing entities are going to somehow relinquish this new technological space that they've created. So like that guy right there, we just saw that Chris Wright and his company, Craig Wright and his company, developed a lot of the early blockchain, and he may in fact be this Nakamoto dude. And I forgot what Nakamoto means. It also means something about, I don't know, it was about being hidden or something. I can't remember, something like that. And it may be him. And according to that trial, that case, the 1.1 million Bitcoins are his, which would likely mean he is either Nakamoto himself or at least part of that early foundational class of crypto people who created the blockchain technology on which crypto works. And which people think gives them a level of anonymity and privacy that I think is challengeable, and we'll see that in a moment. But my point is, as it says here, and I think it's important on a number of levels, for my microcosmic look at buying power, this is just another example of how buying power is used to assess every segment of the population in the world, and every municipality, every corporation, every single thing. It has nothing to do with actual income or wealth or economic strength. It can be used in this case to describe wild discrepancies, but it's certainly not suggesting, or maybe put better, it is suggesting accurately that even the buying power of the individual and the poor doesn't compare to the organized institutional wealth of countries, powerful, certainly countries and individuals, or the top 2%, or I should say the top 10% that own 76% of all the wealth in the world, and whose buying power is $550,000 versus $4,000. The data confirms a trend of global inequality that has only increased in recent decades. That, again, my broader point about crypto and the internet and media technology and all of this new media, all this new technology of the internet and social media and this and that and e-cash and transfers and now cryptocurrency, all that has done is increase global inequality to the point where the top 0.1% or 520,000 adults in the world now own 11% of all the wealth, up from 7% in 1995. The billionaires in the world own 3.5% of all the wealth as compared to only 0.5% in 1995. In the US, the wealth gap between the top earners and the lowest earners has leveled off. About 35% of the wealth is owned by the richest 10% in the country, and 2% of the wealth is owned by the bottom 50%. And that's a leveling off. Anyway, that's a leveling off. All right. But as people have been arguing with me and others, not just with me, but arguing in the world, into this new environment comes blockchain and crypto, and are going to make everything free and equal and create a level playing field. That will, okay, I got to change that over there. Allow for Black people and others to amend and correct their previous low position. But as I've been talking about, and this came out a couple of weeks ago, but I've been trying to point out as I've been paying attention to this more and more, is that, and even we talked about it a few weeks back, maybe even longer, on with the good folks at Wall Street on Parade had talked about this, that the two things crypto investors should know about the infrastructure bill that Biden signed include, well, taxes for exchanges and I believe wallets. So President Joe Biden signed a $1.2 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill on November 15th that includes some new legislation crypto investors should know about. The new law requires brokers, aka cryptocurrency exchanges, to issue a 1099-B. In other words, crypto exchanges will now be required to notify IRS directly of crypto transactions. The bill will signify the end of hiding many gains for many crypto investors, says Grant Maddox, an independent GFP based in South Carolina. This will in turn create tax reporting challenges for many crypto investors. For investors who use their own crypto wallet, the information reported to the IRS in 1099 will be prone to inaccuracy, since exchanges reporting on trading activity will have a limited view into what these investors paid for crypto in the first place. So what should investors do? Keep track of finding your crypto, blah, 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 blah. it has said that that hours after Biden signed the new infrastructure bill into law, Bitcoin and Ethereum saw big drops in price after both had set multiple new all-time highs in recent days. Bitcoin dropped below $59,000 overnight, and Ethereum dropped below 4,200. Both climbed back up modestly by Wednesday. All right. So just going to keep going here. It is becoming, that is, crypto is becoming more and more the playground of already existing elite entities. And as I'm going to get here, and in this case, the federal government, who want to make sure that they get their cut. Okay, but it's not just them. That is, it's not just federal government and taxation. As we see here, the head of the CIA says it's been doing mysterious cryptocurrency work. The feds are looking into cryptocurrencies and apparently have been since the Trump administration. This revelation came during the Wall Street Journal's uber-hyped CEO summit on Monday, where, as Vice President reported, CIA Director William Burns admitted that his agency has, quote, a number of different projects focused on cryptocurrency. He went on to say that he inherited the agency's crypto maneuvers from his predecessor, a likely reference to the ghoulish Gina Haspel, who was last to lead the CIA during Trump's presidency. Whoops. Went on to inherit. My predecessor had started this, but had set it in motion a number of different projects focused on cryptocurrency and trying to look at second and third order consequences, as well as helping with our colleagues in other parts of the U.S. government to provide solid intelligence on what we're seeing as well, Burns said. Translation: the CIA is surveilling crypto networks and platforms and trying to figure out how important a priority it is for so-called national security. Burns' FedSpeak admission came in response to an audience question about the growing problem of ransomware attacks, which are admittedly very real and serious threat to that partially led to real-life gas shortage and the alleged death of newborn infant and the possibly even issues with U.S. beef supply chain. As Vice reported, Burns cryptic remarks have reinvigorated blockchain bros rumors that Bitcoin's mysterious creator Satoshi Nakamoto was an intelligence asset. So this is the part I was talking about earlier. Though, as Vice noted, that line is mostly just a meme. Indeed, former CIA acting director Michael Morrell said back in April that blockchain is a boon for surveillance in a white paper meant to encourage governments to embrace crypto. All right, so this white paper, let's look at the white paper because this is fascinating as well. This is fascinating. And again, anyway, let me just, let's just, now again, this is a CIA, a publicly released CIA assessment of Bitcoin and blockchain. So all grains of salt should be taken. But I think what they say here is interesting. New technologies almost always come with significant benefits for society as well as negative externalities. It is the role of government officials to make policy that allows the benefits to flourish while protecting us from the downsides. Now, as an introductory statement, I actually fully agree with this. And this is again sort of my point about political power and what we should be focused on, as opposed to, and why I even was talking, promoting or supporting this idea of debt jubilee and massive outcome related guarantees. Not an equality of opportunity, but an equality of outcome. So I'm not saying that we should want to work with and support government and banks and economics as they currently exist, but we should recognize the framework that is of value. So to the point being made here, I fully agree. And I don't want a situation where we don't have, and this is my point about being critical of crypto. I don't want to live in a world where there is no, for lack of a better word, governmental regulation or oversight of our economy. How wealth is created, where it's distributed, what is considered wealth, who has it, how are they wielding it? All of this should be on the table. New technology can be good or bad, but it should be up to our democratically elected, I don't know, however we want to use, what language we want to use for our new society, but there has to be some oversight, some organization, some leadership over how that technology is used, so that we're not put into a world where, hey, brother, invest in, and sister, invest in Bitcoin and get your money up, while the CIA and billionaires and capitalists and vultures are doing the same thing. We can't just be saying enter that space with all of these other ignoble actors involved and say, figure it out. We can get in there and make it work too. An unregulated and allegedly anonymous, I don't want that. So as they say here, needs to be some balance between innovators and regulators. All right. By the way, financial companies offering Bitcoin services. Blackrock, the largest, that's Larry Fink's largest investment hedge fund private equity group in the world. They're managing at least $8 trillion in assets directly, and another 20 plus trillion who use their trading platform and de facto allow them to manage and those funds as well. So we're talking about something bigger than the federal, than the national economy here in the United States, bigger than the gross domestic product of the United States. The biggest institutional investor in almost everything. In the video we played before, who told the people, if you want our money, and you do, because you can't survive and be big and expand, you can't compete with anybody without our money, you got to promote and virtue signal that you're doing something good for the environment and around diversity. Anyway. So far, 2021 has been a year of significant developments and milestones for Bitcoin. Its price surpassed $60,000 for the first time in its history. Major corporations from Tesla to Square to MicroStrategy are adding it to their balance sheets. Large banks are providing Bitcoin-related services, with Morgan Stanley saying it will soon offer access to 3 Bitcoin funds for its wealth management clients. Canada has approved Bitcoin exchange-traded funds. There's growing momentum for Bitcoin's emerging use as a store of value. So again, all what crypto defenders have been saying is, to a certain extent, is being supported here, but to me, for very obviously different reasons. So crypto defenders keep saying it's going to be a store of value. It's going to be simultaneously a currency and an investment. More big wigs are going to get involved. It's going to become more important. So get in it, because it will help you individually and us collectively. So again, how is that any different, particularly at this point, from, I was having a conversation with my buddy, and he was asking, what is the comparison between investing in, why can't Bitcoin be both a currency and an investment? Isn't the dollar or the pound both a currency and an investment? And my point is, and largely so what? Because the argument then becomes, what if we had invested earlier in the British pound, we would be free? So if we just invest earlier in the next currency, we'll be free? Just as I've been arguing with buying power, it doesn't matter. First, second, last, whatever. Black people don't have the wealth to invest in the first place. Black people as a consumer base don't have the wealth to purchase what is being sold to create wealth in large enough numbers for whatever that business is. So even if you had gotten in, even if Black people collectively had been aware enough, as the pro-cryptos would argue, to invest early enough, they would not have been able to invest large enough, early enough to make enough wealth compared to these folks. And if old boy Wright was already there at the beginning with 1.1 million coins, that's 1/20th of all the coins that are going to be made anyway, held by one man. They said there's only 21 million that are going to be made anyway. He already had 1.1, already has 1.1. So it's again no different than saying get into another speculative investment con game, replacing Bitcoin or cryptocurrency and reference to the blockchain technology, which I'm going to come back to, as something brand new, as something wholly different from the existing economic system or some other currency or whatever, or any other technology. So as it continues here, the broad generalizations about the use of Bitcoin in illicit finance are significantly overstated. This is what I thought was an interesting part of the conversation here in this CIA analysis of Bitcoin and blockchain. Going back to what I said earlier about the two dominant narratives. One for the mainstream is that crypto has a bad rep for being connected, as it says here, to illicit finance. But for us, it's being given an unduly positive reputation as a revolutionary potential. So here they're dealing with that first part of the narrative and saying the opposite, that illicit criminality in Bitcoin and crypto is overstated. Put simply, blockchain analysis is highly effective. Quite the opposite is what they're saying here for their purposes. That is the CIA. Put simply, blockchain analysis is a highly effective crime fighting and intelligence gathering tool. So what I'm coming to understand is that the illicit activity narrative is as fake and false or damaged as the positive revolutionary false narrative being imposed on Black people and others. From their perspective, and I would agree, going back to Surveillance Valley, which we used again to great effect in my sociology and mass communications course this semester. As Yasha Levine points out in Surveillance Valley, the Tor network and all these other they're all already infused with backdoors and openings and were established with the help of the NSA and the federal government. So this idea that these things are, and now how perfect would it be if this Craig Wright was not only one of the early creators of blockchain, but was in fact the CIA? It would be perfect for the Yasha Levine's analysis. It would fit perfectly as a next chapter in an updated edition of that book if that turns out to be true. But the point still being, officially speaking, their claim is that no, blockchain doesn't provide anonymity. Put together with some other techniques, it provides us with all that we need to put everybody under surveillance. A senior executive at a major cryptocurrency analytics firm told us that the common belief that Bitcoin is both primarily and increasingly used for purposes of illicit finance is, quote, uninformed and not based on data, and that there are no numbers and no methodology supporting it. According to a recent study by blockchain analytics firm Chainalysis, illicit activity among all cryptocurrencies as a percent of total cryptocurrency activity from 2017 to 2020 was less than 1%. Why do they say? Because they do say why. A little bit further, a 2019 study by the Rand Corporation further concluded that terrorist use of cryptocurrencies is minimal and that no current cryptocurrency provides a terrorist group what it would need to be a significant user. Why? Well, as they continue, blockchain technology is a powerful but underutilized forensic tool for governments to identify illicit activity and bring criminals to justice. And just in case I skipped it and didn't make note of it, the reason why they say so-called terrorists and illicit users have moved away from Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is because whenever something becomes used and usable and known to be used and usable, those who want to engage in so-called illicit activity move into something else or find other ways. But I can't remember where. Anyway, but as they say here, because as they say here, blockchain technology is a powerful but underutilized forensic tool for governments to identify illicit activity and bring criminals to justice. One expert on the cryptocurrency ecosystem called blockchain technology one expert on the cryptocurrency ecosystem called blockchain technology a boon for surveillance. A currently serving official at the CFTC added that it is easier for law enforcement to trace illicit activity using Bitcoin than it is to trace cross-border illegal activity using traditional banking transactions, and far easier than cash transactions. So if people remember, well, for those of us of a certain age, we might remember going back decades that we have been hearing among the wise and the illumined and the enlightened ones that those in power want us to move into a cashless society, to get us away from tangible money, in part because that would make it harder for the so-called what is it? Wow, I just went blank on that. It makes it harder for those doing illicit work to do their work. That you're more trackable and traceable on the digital this and the digital that. And that even with blockchain, despite the claims, so on the one hand, the pro cryptos are getting the good news that everybody's getting involved. It's going to be a real thing, just like you all predicted. But just like all real things that get used in this world, they're used by those in power who are more politically organized and in power to do what they want. So people are running around here telling Black people for some unknown reason, an unspecified and I think poorly explained reason, that you should want to get your money, get into crypto because you can't be traced and everything's protected, everything's private. And again, as I said earlier, I don't think we should want that. I don't want it to be unknown, again, where wealth is and how wealth is being transacted and who's got it and who's doing what with it. I don't need to be in everybody's business when they make individual purchases. And I get that people would want to be able to shop without having their data and all that other stuff. Now, but that's just another question about data protection, about coming up with other mechanisms to de-incentivize that kind of crime, like redistributing wealth. So you don't have levels of inequality that we have today, which would de-incentivize people to commit crime and steal from others. But The flip side for the pro cryptos is, yeah, like I said, everybody's getting into your stuff, into blockchain and all this other stuff that you were promoting and continuing to promote as some revolutionary alternative that frees and gives privacy and anonymity to and all this other stuff. Well, no. In February 2021, testimony before the House Subcommittee on National Security, International Development, and Monetary Policy, former Assistant Secretary for the Treasury for Terrorist Financing and Financial Crimes, Daniel Glazer, stated that when it comes to transparency in the international financial system and the domestic financial system, quote, cryptocurrencies provide enhanced opportunities in certain ways for law enforcement agencies to be able to trace transactions, end quote. Glazer added that the U.S. government should bring cryptocurrencies into the system and regulate them in the appropriate way. Again, I actually agree with that. Not for the purposes of the CIA or the currently arranged federal government and economic system, but in general, philosophically, of course, currency and economic transactions should be regulated. One expert told us that the chance of catching illicit actors is magnitudes greater using blockchain than in traditional banking sector. Another went so far as to say that if all criminals use blockchain, we would wipe out illicit financial activity. In fact, its transparent nature led one blockchain analytics expert to compare transactions on blockchain to having the whole world be a witness to paying someone $2,000 in a dark alley. Based on our research, I have come to believe that if there was one financial ecosystem for bad actors to use that would maximize law enforcement's chances of identifying them and their illicit activities, it would be blockchain. Blockchain technology enables this forensic power because it captures every single transaction for all to see. It provides governments and the public at large with a permanent, unchangeable record of transactions. When viewed together with other data derived from the analysis of blockchain analytics, as well as traditional law enforcement tools like subpoenas, blockchain technology can allow for the identification of both illicit activity and the identities of end users. Digital exchanges are typically do not have, decentralized exchanges, DEXs, which typically do not have a central authority on which to apply surveillance and then regulatory regulations, are also an emerging challenge. Although decentralized exchanges are responsible for only a small portion of overall cryptocurrency transaction volume. Okay, so remember, that's the other part of the claim of those pro cryptos, that we are decentralizing the economy, getting it out of the hands of the banks and the federal government, decentralizing, which again, why would we want this? In his exchange with Glenn Greenwald, our brother Andre Domis made that point very well. He said something like, as a communist, I want centralized power. We should want centralized power. Anyway, but my point is, those who promote it as a positive should realize that according to this analysis, these decentralized exchanges only represent a small portion of overall cryptocurrency transaction volume. In September 2020, Chain Analysis was awarded $625,000 grant from the IRS to develop Monero tracking software. Monero, for those who are not aware, is another form of cryptocurrency. Last November, CipherTrace also filed 2 patents for technologies related to tracing Monero transactions after working with U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Finally, in December 2020, cryptocurrency forensic software was even able to reliably trace stolen Bitcoin that had been passed through several coin mixers. Why is this? Because what is happening is, I think they're going to get to in a minute. I think I'm getting it from here. The decentralization claim is re-centralizing, not in traditional banks, but on equally privately white venture capitalist owned digital platforms. So they're just simply saying, take your money out of a bank and put it into my somehow label decentralized platform. They use, again, according to the article here, they're using artificial, or the analysis here, blockchain forensics can be used in multiple ways by law enforcement and intelligence services. First, it can be used as an investigative tool in existing cases. Law enforcement can use blockchain to uncover the illicit activity of the target of an investigation. It can use artificial intelligence algorithms developed from the partners of how illicit actors behave in the ecosystem. It can identify previously unknown bad actors, so they can create algorithms that would mimic and catch the behavior of other people. That's wow. All of the experts we consulted believe that governments have been slow to recognize the forensic power of blockchain technology. One expert went even further, saying that the biggest threat involving cryptocurrencies is not illicit finance, but rather that governments do not yet fully understand the power of blockchain as a tool for law enforcement and intelligence agencies. 3 major blockchain analytic firms, Chainalysis, CipherTrace, and Elliptic, are involved in this, and comprise what is described here as blockchain forensics that are being used now by government agencies in Europe, Japan, and South Korea as well. Using blockchain analytics, they traced stolen funds to various exchanges, worked with those exchanges to identify the users, and matched. So again, these exchanges which only some of which are rather decentralized, it seems like. I'm not really, yeah, anyway. Yeah, I admit I'm not exactly clear on what comprises, what constitutes a decentralized platform, which this analysis says is not used often by cryptocurrency in cryptocurrency exchange, and wallets. Like the investigators linked wallet addresses and were able to trace stolen funds using to various exchanges, which I'm assuming then are categorized differently than decentralized exchanges. But it just seems that it seems like the centralizing power is just reconstituted on these private exchanges, and then that the total comprise or the constellation then of the exchanges become this new, what they would say is decentralized, but it seems to just replace anyway the constellation of banks that we have now. Anyway. But using blockchain analytics, they traced stolen funds to various exchanges, worked with those exchanges to identify the users, and matched that user information to the data found on the forums. Notably, investigators identified an individual who never posted anything publicly that could link him to his real-world identity by analyzing transactions between Bitcoin addresses. So I think that, again, is deep. Notably, investigators identified an individual who never posted anything publicly that could link him to his real-world identity by analyzing transactions between Bitcoin addresses. So again, there is a method that they are using or can use to find out who people are, making it, as they say, a boon to surveillance. So they say, in conclusion, why do we see such alarmist statements in articles about the threat posed by Bitcoin? There are several reasons. First, it's a new technology and it's complicated to comprehend. People are typically fearful of what they do not understand. And yet, oddly, in terms of the messaging to Black and brown people, I think the confusion around what we don't understand, because Black people, as we reported the other day, at 44% of the adoption rates, lead adoption rates in Bitcoin adoption, because of the messaging that is saying, you may not know what this new technology is, but you should trust me, the celebrity put in front of you, to tell you that it's good. And when Hill Harper and John Hope Bryant and Roland Martin and Spike Lee and Jim Jones and what's his name that did the NFT album, Tory Lanez, and others, when they are telling you and telling Black people at rates and telling a desperately unequal colonized population that this is your salvation, it turns it around. This issue of not being able to comprehend, it becomes somehow a positive. Second, bad news drives perceptions more than good. So that's why they took it upon themselves to say, hey, illicit payments are not a big deal. It's a small part of the problem here. In fact, it's going to help us catch everybody. Finally, as they say here, Bitcoin and its decentralized nature seem to pose a disruptive threat to traditional financial institutions. The same could have been said for electronic banking and e-signatures 20 years ago, which stirred up significant debate regarding consumer protection and integrity of the financial system. Eventually, traditional financial institutions found ways to successfully incorporate it into their businesses. And that's the same point I've been making here. Without political power, there's nowhere to go in the economy or in the world or geographically even to be beyond the reach of imperialism. So there's no way you're going to just slip off and create a few businesses here, or slip off and invest in some cryptocurrency here, or slip off and grab a couple of states in the South and have this Black utopia, this Black Wall Street, this Black this. It's not going to happen. There must be a political struggle. We must engage politically to organize for a guarantee of the outcomes of the society in which we live. But to that point about the perceived threat, let me just make sure that pulls up. There's something here that I want to show from Richard Wolff. A couple of years ago, he was in an interview with Jimmy Dore that I found here, where he gives an answer to why Wall Street has previously been slow to, well, at this point would be seen to be previously slow to adopt crypto and have been skeptical. And even in that interview, or in that discussion between the Bitcoin socialist and Glenn Greenwald, and his with Andre Domise, that is Glenn's and Andre Domise that I referred to a couple shows ago. One of the arguments that Glenn Greenwald that I've heard repeated elsewhere, that I've heard repeated in Black spaces primarily as well, is even by that Spike Lee commercial. Look, the traditional economic system has been harming us, been exploiting us. This new thing is not the old money. It's now seen as a threat to Wall Street and our old oppressors. It's going to free us. Wall Street is scared of it. Glenn Greenwald brought up, why is Wall Street afraid of it? Why is Hillary Clinton saying it's going to, threaten the stability of the dollar? Why are they worried about this and that? And shouldn't that be a reason why we do get into cryptocurrency? Because if Wall Street's scared and Hillary Clinton's scared, then it must be a sign that it's threatening to them, and we should want to push that. But the threat is misunderstood. The threat to them, I think, has never been understood, and which has prevented us from seeing or understanding the shifts that they would have taken in the 3 years since this interview was conducted. I'm about to show you, and since the time of the early criticism coming from Wall Street, et cetera. In other words, when people like Jamie Dimon, by the way, Larry Fink was just, the CEO of Blackrock was just quoted recently as saying that he's starting to support. I think I have it here. Yeah. Let me hold off on it. Maybe I'll come back to that. But because BlackRock is now into mining, BlackRock and Vanguard are now mining crypto. Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, is endorsing Bitcoin now. and saying he disagrees with Jamie Dimon, his buddy Jamie Dimon of JP Morgan, about it being useless. On the one hand, I thought it was interesting that he's saying I don't agree with Jamie Dimon that cryptocurrency is useless, but his investments are on the side of mining, which to me reads like BlackRock is looking to get in on the high end of the Ponzi scheme. If people are going to get all wrapped up in it, then they might as well come to us and pay us for the coins they want to invest in. Or if anybody's going to be mining, who's going to outmine BlackRock when we put our infinite capital behind a project? Who's going to, but the point but the real point I'm getting at is that as Larry Fink may represent the changing tides of Wall Street's adaptation to and adoption of cryptocurrency, whereas Jamie Dimon is the retrograde old figure, the threat that would have once been seen may no longer exist. So that's why I want to show this. Let me just play this clip here. Hold on. I didn't mean for it to start already. Okay. Let me pull. Nope. Yep. Share. Tab audio. Here we go. Oh, and by the way, so if Richard Wolff is, if as his folks said, if he won't come on my show. Hey, as long as you continue to give interviews and say things publicly, I can make use of it, and we'll have you on the show this way. But anyway, let me just play this here.
What about blockchain technology and Bitcoin?
Well, blockchain is a technology that has certain kinds of uses. That's okay. It's an open question how valuable it is. It's being debated. It's being tried in a variety of industries and so on. The Bitcoin thing, that is a pure sign that we're in trouble as an economy, because all that is a gambling. This is purely creating a way for people to use money that is not returning very well for them in the economy, because our economy is in trouble. And now it's a chance to make big money overnight. So take a look at Bitcoin, right? It went from, $500 to 20,000 or whatever it was. This is, you see this at usually what's called the top, the peak of the economic cycle, when there's a lot of money being made in a small number of people's hands. They're not satisfied with rates of rate. I mean, if you put your money in a savings bank now, you get 0.5% a year. So, I mean, this is, and it's comparable in other investments. So this is very low. People don't want that. Some people have enough money to take a nice healthy chunk of their money and play in a casino type of place. And that's all that Bitcoin was. It's a place to play. And that's why you have them popping up all over the place, because there's lots of people who want to take the chance and cash in, knowing full well, by the way, many of the people who play that, they know very well what they're doing, but they plan to go in, ride it, and get out before it crashes. But of course, that the premise there is there has to be some fool who'll buy it from you, holding it when it crashes, the very thing you don't want to have happen to you, but they don't want to have it happen to them either. So it really is a kind of crapshoot as to when this will fall apart. But this is a sign of rampant, extreme speculation of the sort you have when you've had an upswing and you've concentrated wealth in a very small number of players.
Okay, so you don't think that, do you think Wall Street sees Bitcoin as a threat?
No.
Or the government? Nobody sees it as a threat.
No. I think they got nervous for a while when the kinds of money that were being made was pulling in all kinds of little and medium level players who were just dazzled by the numbers. And so they began to get nervous, as with all speculations, that if too many people get involved and then it crashes, that could have ramification. They don't want that to happen. So that the banks then came in with the governments and tamped it down, and they will squash it because they don't want that risk. They want to take the risks they're taking, such as making subprime loans again, but they don't want anyone else to crowd in, especially because they can't control, because of blockchain and other things, they can't quite control that market as readily as they control all the others.
So you're telling me they're doing that stuff again? They're giving subprime loans?
Yes, it's in all the financial press that there's an explosion of subprime loans for automobiles, for land, for buildings. What? Yeah, because the rate of return you can get, it's the same motivation that led to those things in 2004, 5, and 6 that exploded in 2007 and 8. Now that 10 years have passed, the rates of return are very low, and so the pressure is building up in the banks, in the investors. They want more returns, and so they'll take more risk, telling themselves, as they always do, it's different this time. There are protections. There's Dodd-Frank bill. There's this. Every story like this is a repeat. And, you know, it's a wonderful example of, if you don't learn from history, you will repeat it, only worse this time.
All right. So again, and I saw somebody said that Richard Wolff went on with Pascal on their podcast. You know, that's cool. And I don't know what it is. I don't know what I've done. I can speculate because I know Brother Pascal doesn't agree with me on the Afro-pessimism, for instance. And we were on an email exchange, and he didn't appreciate my disagreement. So I'm wondering if that, you know, I've walked away from the class folks a little bit on that one. They may be mad at me. And you know who else was on that email chain? Adolph Reed. Who I haven't gotten booked on my show yet, again, by the way, or since. So I don't know. Maybe to the extent folks pay me any attention at all, there's a concern around like I had a Marxist tell me when Obama got elected, and I was saying this is a bad thing, and she was saying I was wrong. She said my dialectics are broken, that somehow dialectics should have told me it was a good thing that he got elected. So I said, maybe my dialectics are broken. But anyway, so I don't know. We'll see. But the point is, it's all good. It doesn't matter. It don't have to be personal, whatever. We can all make jokes, have some fun with it. But the reality is, if you say good stuff and put out good work, we can make use of it. So that, and he does. So the point I'm getting at there, and this is why I did have it here that I want to show you is that, Wall Street would have been, as Wolff was saying, concerned that a bubble that is building that they don't have any control over will burst. And when it does, their friends won't be in place to get the bailouts, and the people that they need to function within the economy at whatever level may not be able to. So if there's a collapse in a housing market, you can bail out your friends, restart the loans back up, get people back in those houses, jack up the prices, have Blackrock buy up all the properties, and you can do that. But with crypto, it's a little bit more difficult, at least a few years ago at the time that interview was being taped, and I think would speak to the change that we're seeing now, given some of what I just showed you there in terms of how the CIA and other businesses are cropping up to say, and banks are coming, and other financial entities that more are getting involved with crypto, saying we can get involved, we can use it for surveillance, we can get involved, as I'll show you here, at the level of mining. BlackRock joins Fidelity and Vanguard as a Bitcoin mining investor. A mandatory SEC filing dated June 30th, 2021 shows that BlackRock, the world's largest asset manager with $9 trillion in assets, has significant stakes in 2 Bitcoin miners, 6.71% in Marathon Digital and 6.61% in Riot Blockchain. Just to be clear, this is $9 trillion in assets directly under their management. there's more than 20 trillion under indirect management, given how many people use BlackRock's proprietary platform for trading. So anyway, the total commitment amounts to, I don't even know what this number is. Can somebody put in the chat? I'll check. What is this number? 382,960. No. 382,962,003.8 million dollars. So 382 million. Am I tripping? Or is that just 300? Or is that just 382 million? So just under 400 million, right? I think the 0.08 was messing me up, right? So that's what it is. That's all it is, all. So just under $400 million they've invested in mining operations, right? Okay. Okay. There was another one. So let me stop that one. There was another one on this, right? Because this is the one where Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, endorses Bitcoin. BlackRock CEO sees huge opportunities in crypto, but skeptical about value. BlackRock CEO Larry Fink said Wednesday, while he sees huge opportunities for cryptocurrencies, he's likely aligned with JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon's view that Bitcoin is worthless. Well, that seems to contradict what says later on in the article, but whether it's Bitcoin or something else, or more of a governmental official digital dollar that will play out, Fink said in an interview. I'm sorry, I'm not a student of Bitcoin, he said, and where it's going to go. So I can't tell you whether it's going to go to $80,000 or to zero, but I do believe there's a huge role for a digitized currency. And I believe that's going to help consumers worldwide, whether it's Bitcoin or something else, or more of a governmental official digital dollar that will play out, Fink said in an interview on CNBC. It makes no difference to me. I don't think you should smoke cigarettes either. Our clients are adults. They disagree. That's what makes markets, Diamond said. So JP Morgan CEO, who has made clear in the past that he is no fan of Bitcoin, reiterated sentiment Monday, calling Bitcoin worthless and comparing its trading to smoking cigarettes. It makes no difference to me. I don't think you should smoke cigarettes either. Our clients are adults. They disagree. That's what makes markets. BlackRock, which has almost $8 trillion in assets under management, has allowed two of its biggest funds to engage in Bitcoin derivatives, which is, now I won't pretend to understand this entirely, but it sounds a lot like what Richard Wolff was saying was already happening several years ago, with a return to the predatory lending that they attribute the cause of the 2008 crisis to. Derivatives, I know, had a lot to do with that. So I don't know to what extent Bitcoin derivatives would become a new market, a new collapsible market that would hurt people investing in it at the end of the day. Because again, as Richard Wolff was saying, it won't be Larry Fink holding an empty bag. Moreover, BlackRock, as the article continues, reminded its investors that crypto exchanges have repeatedly experienced technical and operational issues, making Bitcoin prices unavailable at many times. In addition, the asset manager further states that the nascent market has been the target of fraud and manipulation, which could adversely impact the performance of its funds. At the time, BlackRock CEO provided a somewhat bullish take on the world's first cryptocurrency. In a relatively rare endorsement, Fink said Bitcoin has caught the attention and could largely replace gold, but warned of its growing popularity that has a real impact on the US dollar. So again, this is not me in defense of the economic system or the US dollar. It's me trying to promote the idea, or maybe the reminder or the fact that cryptocurrency, blockchain technology are seen by those in power as both as easing surveillance, uh, um, and as a source of investment for the venture capitalist elite. So, or as worthless, depending on which version of the capitalist elite you listen to. Leaving little room for Bitcoin or cryptocurrency or the technology of blockchain to provide the kind of whatever claims of anonymity and privacy and opportunity that are being promoted to Black and other communities as a salvation. What is ultimately happening, and this is why, whether I'm advocating the after party concept or just a general critique of what's going on, there has to be movements towards political power and management and oversight and regulation of all processes that create, define, and create and distribute wealth. It shouldn't matter whether we're first into crypto or early into crypto, whether we invest at all. It shouldn't require investment acumen or propping up an investment model as a solution to a collective political problem. What sort of to what Wolf is saying and what I think Larry Fink and others are saying on the other end is that if crypto or something else poses a threat to creating a bubble that those in control of the economy can't bail themselves out of, it must be challenged and brought into certain levels of regulation. By that, I also mean regulation, not just in terms of federal oversight and legislation, but I mean regulation in terms of the big players getting involved. So whether it's the initial apparent founding class of the Craig Wrights, or the new to the game massive big dogs like Blackrock and Larry Fink coming in later, the point is the game, so to speak, has to be regulated, whether by legislation or the involvement of rich power players who will benefit by either being able to create the bubble, benefiting from the burst of the bubble. And that, anyway, so, and that's where it leads to that, I think, very interesting competition between, represented there briefly by Jamie Dimon and Larry Fink, because Dimon is from his perspective probably saying, like he said, I don't really, if you want to smoke cigarettes, you can. I don't think it's going to be worth anything. So I don't want people to get involved with something that is known to be ultimately worthless because we, meaning the elite, are not already there enough, or we aren't involved enough to assure that we win no matter what. What I'm suggesting with the new attitudes of both the CIA and people like Larry Fink and Blackrock, they represent the changing, the turning of the tides to say, okay, fine. Not that blockchain and crypto were ever going to be a threat to a wild radical redistribution of wealth that would overturn us from, and topple us. That's not what they were saying. They were saying we just needed to get regulated either through legislation or our involvement to the point that we create the bubble, we burst the bubble, we benefit from the burst, and that the people who suffer within a certain contained arrangement that we are managing. We want to be able to bail out our friends and ourselves while claiming to help the poor when the bubble bursts. If our friends are not involved, or if the bubble bursts and the people walking off with the benefits of that bursted bubble can't be identified, or we don't know who they are, or they're not on our team, or then when the bubble bursts and all of our citizens and workers are suffering and we have to do something to help them, I'm suggesting to say that it would lose its value, because it's not, that benefit to the people at the bottom is not coming is not coming funneled through the real help that comes to the people at the top. So for instance, if you have to bail out the financial elite and Wall Street with the HOPE and the CARES Act and all of that, when the economy collapses due to a COVID shutdown, that's one thing. Because and it also allows you to take care of your friends while giving pennies to working people to hold them over, and even claiming that you're doing something for them. Whereas if the bubble bursts and your friends are not in that mix, you either have to give the poor a direct bailout, which you never want to do, because then it becomes too obvious what's going on. And you have to do it without your friends at the top getting to skim or getting their initial cut, because they're not being bailed out because they weren't in it. So now here comes Larry Fink saying, I'm getting in it, and I'm getting in it at the derivatives level, at the mining level. He's not buying Bitcoin. I didn't read it as that. He's mining it so that you'll buy it from him. While black celebrities and spokespeople will be telling black people to do that to boost Larry Fink's stock value, to boost Craig Wright's stock value by buying, you're not buying a coin. You're not buying a $60,000 coin, by investing what, a few hundred, a few thousand? Anyway. We can come back to this. I'll keep coming back to it, obviously. There was another clip from the Australian 60 Minutes show that I was going to show where an Aus coin, the argument over Australia's Bitcoin, but we can come back to that another time. The essential point from that was that somebody who made it rich off of Bitcoin in Australia did so by investing early with $10,000, which I thought was interesting, because who has $10,000 to invest? But then has since gotten out, cashed out. Because like Wolf said, he rode the wave and cashed out at a higher price, made a whole bunch of millions of dollars, and is now gone. But that required that all of you all who invested came in later and invested in Bitcoin, so that he could do that. And that's all that is. It's no different than any other speculative investment. And nowhere does anybody say, even the pro-crypto folks, how this is going to create wealth that gets redistributed to end poverty and inequality. So I'll just wrap here by sort of trying to, end where I started, that again, cryptocurrency and the new wave and the new propaganda around it, particularly directed at black people, because again, the messaging towards whites and others has largely been, it's illicit, it's this, it's that, don't trust it. But to us, it's been, no, this is your salvation. Get in it to win it. You can have, own your wealth, as they say. As one of the taglines that they use says, but it is itself only wealth to the extent others have invested in inflating its price. It's not even usable as a currency in that way yet. So people who are even advocating and writing books about black people and Bitcoin are saying, get in it. It is a currency, but you should save it for several years before it blossoms into some sort of profit-inducing asset, which makes it then a speculative investment and less a currency. When people invest in the dollar and the pound, they're investing in what are established and government-backed currencies that have the backing of dominant imperial powers themselves, having flush with at least credit or funding, investment. creating and guaranteeing the stable store of value and increased or relatively stable value of those currencies. Bitcoin is something very different, not currently backed, not currently regulated, and therefore just so only valued by its in the amount of investment it can create by telling you to invest and become the latest in the Ponzi scheme provider. Anyway. All right, anyway, to really wrap up where I started is that's why I'm saying that crypto has become a way of rebranding capitalism and black capitalism. It's a way of saying, look, the capitalism isn't the problem. Black capitalism, increased black engagement with capitalist economy is a solution. We don't need political power. We don't need a revolution. We don't need to redistribute wealth. We don't need to go for big public policies like debt jubilees and things like that. So, and by the way, that was one piece I wanted to tie in with this argument around reparations. It's the same thing. On the one hand, when I'm criticized for my views on reparations, it's people telling me, black people telling me, well, we need something specific for black people that others don't benefit from, even if they have to sign off on. But then at the same time, a lot of those same people will say we should, in addition to going for reparations, do things like start businesses and invest in crypto or other speculative Wall Street, increasingly Wall Street products, which itself requires engagement and solidarity and the benefit of white folks and others. So at the one hand, you're saying for reparations, we should go for something specific only for us that doesn't involve anybody else, even though they would have to sign off on the payment or whatever the plan is. But when it comes to solutions, we don't need political solidarity or engagement with whites. We don't need to be politically engaged or organized in different ways to engage the electoral political process or to be in radical solidarity with genuine allies. We don't need any of that. We need our own, solitary movement, isolated, singular movement, which in the most reactionary versions it takes on the characteristics of saying we need to invest in the economy, engage in electoral politics, which is what reparations would be all about. We have to engage the economy through investment in crypto or starting small businesses, all of which requires white folks' involvement, white folks' support, white folks benefiting. But when I say something like, let's put on the table a political platform of a debt jubilee, yes, everyone benefit. Then all of a, in terms of reparations, then all of a sudden because, well, that's not just for us. So a real, more possible solution that legitimately benefits Black people, like a debt jubilee, is not seen as having the same value as some sort of mythical, isolated movement that will get the support of others just for us. So it's like it becomes it just really becomes another way of giving a reactionary lane for a cottage industry of conservative hustlers rebranded as radicals to create lanes for themselves, to say I am progressive and Black and radical because I'm advocating for investment in cryptocurrency or the starting up of Black businesses or a reparations plan that only benefits us. But none of this will go anywhere. It's unrealistic. It's wildly unrealistic, and it won't go anywhere. So, all right. Not yet. Not yet. But I also want to flip this request for getting a pro crypto person to debate. Where are they bringing me in or bringing in the critics? All respect due to Sinclair Skinner for inviting me and a couple of others to his Howard University blockchain summit, where we were in one session, one of like the dozens of sessions, and paneled with pro crypto folks. But there was no, other than that, I'm not seeing the invitation to, Reggie Middleton said he wanted to debate me, and I said whenever, and I haven't heard from him. So tell him to invite. I mean, I'll do it. It doesn't have to be me, but if there are others, tell him to invite us. I mean, so the blockchain socialist I did invite, and he's in another time zone, so we're gonna have to. I don't know how we're gonna work that out. That's a little bit different. I did tag Glenn Greenwald. I didn't really invite him. I don't think he would do it anyway, but he already had sort of that debate with Andre Domis on their podcast, which I linked in a previous show. But let's see, just looking how we're going to end the sustained after party without capital. See, this is again part of what I think is the myth. We don't need massive investment in capital to sustain an after party or a political party or to start one. I don't think that's the case. I think we just need more people to advocate it, to sign up and join some sort of effort. I don't think, I think it's somewhat part of the mythology that we have to have all this money. Our only strength is the numbers, is the people power, but it just takes the harder work of organizing and getting people who claim that they agree to sign up for some sort of political plan. But I don't think, so I don't know. We're never going to catch up in terms of capital. We're never going to get the kind of capital investment that dominant parties. No, sorry, that might be your audio setting. I don't have, this is not a new mic. In fact, it's the same, it's a newer mic, but it's the same one I've been using. And it's actually, I was told to leave it a little farther away. I didn't do anything to Richard Wolff, man. I like Richard Wolff. I'm just trying to guess what might be spread around about me. Like, I don't think people know me like that. I'm just trying to guess why, like if you went and talked to others, I could see somebody saying, oh, he's too, into that Afro-pessimism, race first stuff, and he's not enough of a Marxist or a class or a materialist. I don't know. I might just be wrong. See, that's always been, I know that's a joke, Anthony, but I always think that this is also misunderstood. I've always felt in my experience that no matter how light I have gotten in the, once the politics, especially once the arguments and the debates start, they don't see complexion anymore. I'm not trying to discount the differences between the dark and light skin experiences. I'm just as sort of as a joke. I think as it just becomes, I think they just see black. All those times the police, I had an issue with the police and I would hear them they would call me in as a black male. I never heard them say, but he's a little bit lighter or he's beige or he's mixed. They don't do that. And that's, as I was joking before, when I went to the doctor last year, I asked him, straight up, I said, I have this joke about, adding, like adding years to my life expectancy to account for my white mother. And I tried to, and this doctor he wasn't feeling it. But the point in his response was, so I was basically what I was trying to ask him was, medically speaking, do studies that account for race account for mixture? And because what really started was he had actually said to me, as he was doing our initial first meeting interview, and you are an African American, So then I said, well, yeah, but I have a white mother, so blah, 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 blah. And his point was medically, they don't seem to differentiate. Now, I don't know if this is fully accurate, and it's just my one, but his point was there is no differentiation. The one drop rule applies medically. In other words, like, if you black, you black. And that's, and medically speaking, we don't account for mixture was what his point was. Oh, this is good. That was good. Yeah, sorry to come back to that late. That was a good one. Yeah. Wolf slammed the door on BPM. Maybe that was it. Maybe he saw me making fun of his boy. I don't know. But I'm the one getting in trouble for defending. Anyway, whatever. I don't know who that is. Tell them that they should invite me wherever they are. I mean, again, or send me where someone has explained how blockchain technology and crypto create wealth and redistribute it. Because the more I read and the more of the interviews I watch, the less I'm impressed with the arguments. So I'm waiting for an impressive argument. I listened to Glenn Greenwald. That was the whole point. I watched 2 of his joints on that. But I was like, his argument isn't good. Doesn't hold. And the blockchain socialists, so we'll see. But yeah, tell them to invite me. I don't know who that is, but or point me to where they have a debate with someone who's opposed to crypto. At least from somewhere in my worldview. I mean, I don't, uh-oh. So where did I get dissed earlier then? That's why I don't like being in the chat. You never know what you're going to see. Yeah, crypto is a weapon in the capitalist offensive to solidify the idea of meritocracy. That makes sense. Why'd you put the LOL on it, though? Anyway, I hope you meant that, because I think that's right. Yeah, another way to say circulate your dollar. Jokers Karen. Visibly irritated with JB Chan's viewpoint. Chan's fine. Yeah. Who? Oh, Karen Hunter. Is that who you're talking about? I don't know. Anyway, listen, I really appreciate you all coming through, and this vigorous chat is once again vigorous, but the unrighteous has $1 gazillion. Dr. Jared and mind altering drugs. We got to fight fire with fire. Wait, Dr. Jared in mind altering drugs. I might be missing something on that one. But anyway, listen, I really appreciate you all coming through. Yeah, Karen Hunter. Okay. Yeah, that's it. It's not redistro. It's one up in capitalism. Yeah. Again, I really appreciate you all coming through. Those of you who will see this later, thanks to you as well. Those of you who are hearing it as a podcast on all the other platforms, thanks to you as well. Please do continue to click like, join, and subscribe, and hit the bell, and support BPM throughout its platform and all of its other shows that are increasing and still coming. And come back tomorrow morning for the Remix Morning Show and more of that Boom Bap Breakfast. And as always, like Fred Hampton used to say, till we say peace if you're willing to fight for it. Catch you next time here at I Mix What I Like. Thanks again, everybody.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.